I think the new AI tools that we are developing are really going to have a huge impact, and we already see it right now. So one application area is trying to develop new drugs. So doing computer simulations and having a higher chance of having new drugs actually getting approved all the way. Because right now the failure rate is quite large, it's like 95%. But if we can use these new AI tools to better select drug candidates, I think this could save a lot of money, and we could get more drugs basically. So that's one thing that's happening right now. Another thing, like if you sort of do more have a more science fiction or a sci-fi approach, is that you can do perhaps automated AI scientists. So we see sort of the beginnings of this today, where you could develop an agent, and this software program can basically do limited amount of very, very limited amount of research. But if we sort of project this out a few years, I think there's a high probability that we will sort of develop an autonomous AI scientist. And you can couple this with a robotic laboratory where you could have a very fast iteration cycle. So the AI agent, the AI scientist, could formulate a hypothesis, and it could be immediately tested within minutes. And then you can sort of iterate super, super fast. So I think it's possible for these AI scientists to do like real, genuine science. And if this can be scaled up, I think the potential is, the impact is huge. Yeah, so this is some possibilities in the near future. The opportunities are abundant. So you can apply AI tools in very sort of in a more preventative care limited sense right now. You can have precision health and sort of figure out, okay, what's the best dosage or of a specific medication for you, or you could do preventative care things and use sort of these AI tools to really take things to the next level. But you can also think like more about the future. This sort of like what you can do right now and what capabilities we have a few years down the road. So in terms of preventative care, I think we can really leverage AI in a very big way, especially developing drugs targeting aging itself. I think this will have a transformative impact on society at large, and this development is already ongoing. I think there are about 220 pharmaceutical companies right now developing drugs targeting aging itself or some age-related disease with the ultimate goal of targeting aging itself. And I think AI tools can significantly speed up this development process. So ethics, it's definitely an important part. So if you if you take a step back and think about like the ultimate goal, what we're trying to do here. So the ultimate goal, in my view, is indefinite lifespan extension. So no limit really. And of course, we want to do this in a healthy manner. We don't want to sort of extend the sick part at the end of life, and that's super unlikely to happen anyways. So when we consider sort of indefinite lifespan extension, a lot of common objections spring to mind. And I've spoken about this, for 2 decades now, and I talk to, thousands of people. And it's like the top three is a fear of overpopulation, a fear of basically only the rich will have access to these drugs, or this is unnatural. Now, if we just consider these objections very briefly, they are either extremely unlikely or just nonsensical. So, for example, overpopulation. Well, even if we were to solve aging like completely, like cure aging with some magical pill tomorrow, all non-age related causes of death would still remain. Infectious diseases, accidents, war, conflict. We will not become immortal. What we would do if we sort of solve aging, stop aging, cure aging, is to bring down the risk of age-related disease, so it's equal in all age cohorts. So, for example, the risk of getting cardiovascular disease would be the same for a 10-year-old or a 90-year-old. So this is the goal. This is what we're trying to achieve. So we would not be overpopulated. And in my book, I have a sort of a whole chapter of this where I describe the population models where we have actually tried this. What would happen if we stop aging completely? And yes, of course, there would be more people, but the effect would be very limited. And this is quite counterintuitive. So I understand why this objection is being raised, but when you actually study the evidence, everyone who's looked at this problem in a serious way has reached the same conclusion. Overpopulation will not happen due to stopping aging. So therefore, I think we can be very sure that this will not happen. And this should also be viewed in the backdrop of the coming population implosion that the United Nations, the United Nations has an office that sort of projects the total world population, and they project that it will implode in a few decades. So overpopulation will in practice not be a problem at all. And the second objection is, okay, only the rich will get these new anti-aging medications. Now, this is very unlikely to happen because these anti-aging medications will be worth a lot of money. So if you view this from an investment point of view, from sort of a government point of view, like if we invest X dollars in buying and subsidizing these anti-aging medications, how many dollars do we get back in terms of, we don't have to spend as much on healthcare, we don't need like elderly care facilities anymore, or we don't, or our citizens can then continue to work and generate tax revenue. So if you consider all these factors, there has been studies sort of trying to estimate the economic value of targeting aging. In fact, that's the name of a very famous article in the journal Nature. So this means that nation states will have a huge incentive to subsidize these medications for everyone, not just the rich. And I'm very happy to reach that conclusion in my book because I care personally about the quality of this. And like the third and final objection is that these anti-aging medications would be unnatural in some way. Now, I think this is simply nonsensical for the very obvious reason that, you can point to a lot of examples of things that are unnatural but still considered to be very good, ethically desirable. For example, cancer medication in children. I've yet to hear anyone who thinks that, yeah, we shouldn't use them because they are unnatural. So this is simply nonsensical. I think we will have to judge case by case if something is good or bad. Yeah, so that's sort of my take on the ethics of life extension. In 2013, there was this now very famous paper called The Hallmarks of Aging. And it's basically a characterization system of different types of molecular damage that occurs in the cell. Now, this is not perfect. We are very far from a complete understanding of what aging is at a sort of cellular level or metabolic level. But we have crossed the knowledge threshold that actually matters. And that is that we know enough to start developing drugs target these aging mechanisms that actually have been discovered. There are a few intracellular pathways, and there are several genes that have been discovered associated to the aging process. And now this is ongoing. So for about 10 years now, pharmaceutical development has been ongoing. Now, there is 0 approved medications today, but there are about 40 clinical trials where we try these medications in humans today. So this is quite far along. And there are about 220 pharmaceutical companies in the world that are doing this. So there's a whole industry now that are developing these drugs. And this was simply not the case 10, certainly 15 years ago. So we now have a real possibility to actually have stuff that really works within a few years, right? Now, in terms of challenges, one very important thing that we need to sort of refine and make much better is develop something called biomarkers of aging. And biomarkers of aging is simply some sort of metric, perhaps a protein in the blood or some physiological measurement like grip strength, for example, that sort of is a proxy for biological age. So we need to be able to measure something very specifically, because if we don't have these biomarkers of aging, how do we validate and prove that our longevity drugs actually work? You would have to do sort of a lifespan study where you take, 1,000 individuals, to separate them into 2 cohorts. Half of the people get the drug you're trying to test and half do not. And then you have to wait like 30 years or something. It's completely undoable. We don't have the time to do this. So a solution to this problem is to identify these biomarkers of aging. And they are not, well, we have a lot of them right now. The most famous one is perhaps the epigenetic clock discovered by Steve Horvath in 2009. Now, this is great, but it's not good enough to actually be sort of approved by the FDA in the United States to prove that a longevity drug actually works. So we need to refine and make these biomarkers of aging much more reliable and robust and validate them, right? But or sort of, and this is ongoing. There's a lot of work on this, and I think in a few, in a single-digit amount of years, we will have good enough biomarkers. So we are well on our way to doing this, and when we have them, in theory, you could sort of take a blood sample of a patient in the morning. You can give them the drug in the at lunchtime that you want to test, and then you can take another blood sample in the evening, and then you would immediately show that yes, we lower the concentration of this biomarker for aging. So, you sort of you shorten the clinical trial from decades to, well, in theory, hours, but in practice, I think it'll months or maybe like a year or something like that. So, yeah, so that's very important. My ultimate goal and what I argue for in my book is indefinite lifespan extension. So I argue that aging is bad for mainly 3 reasons. The first one is that it causes an involuntary death. So aging is by far the biggest cause of death, of all the causes of death that exists. In fact, it's like 90 to 70% of all deaths are attributable to aging itself. In the developing world, is like above 90%. The US, Europe, and so forth. And in the sort of developing world, it's about 70%. And this is insane. I mean, this is 90% of all death. It's like 110,000 people every day on our planet die due to aging. Okay, and this is, in my view, simply unacceptable. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that aging is the root cause. I'm simplifying a bit, but basically all non-infectious disease. So cardiovascular disease, basically all forms of dementia, practically all forms of cancer. So if you don't like disease, if you like being healthy, you should really, really dislike aging and want to do something about that. And the third and final reason why aging itself is bad is that it causes suffering on a massive scale. Not just the diseases of aging, the heart disease, the cancer, the dementia, and everything else, but aging itself. Consider a healthy 90-year-old person. I mean, if you take a statistically representative person, they cannot basically go to the bathroom themselves. They cannot sort of take care of themselves, and they suffer a lot. Their eyesight is diminished, so they have trouble, seeing a screen or reading a newspaper or a book. Their hearing is diminished, so they're having trouble having just a normal conversation. And this is a terrible quality of life. And in my opinion, now that we know that we can't stop aging, why should we continue to accept this enormous suffering? I don't see a good reason for this, and thus I reached the conclusion that indefinite lifespan extension should be the ultimate goal. Just a comment on this goal. This is a very hard goal. I mean, I think it's probably harder than landing on the moon to sort of stop aging completely. That is, taking a 90-year-old person, develop a bunch of drugs that sort of cure all the age-related damage, and sort of making them like a 20-year-old person today with a very low risk of disease. And just, looking like a 20-year-old, and, you can travel the world, you can do whatever, right? That's the goal. But this is a very, very, very hard problem. It will likely take several decades to achieve this goal. But the good news is that we don't have to solve it all at once. We can do this in a stepwise fashion, right? And hopefully we can sort of extend the healthy lifespan, 1 year by one drug, or like 24 months by another drug. So this is a tractable problem. We can solve this.